Have you seen this? As the country grapples with one of the deadliest wildfires ever in California, a clip from Joe Rogan from half a year ago is blowing people's minds for how accurate that prediction turned out to be. But there's also a clue here for what could have led to those rampant wildfires, and of course, absolute respect for the brave firefighters and rescuers risking their lives on the ground, as well as all the volunteers, as nearly a dozen people have already lost their lives. So make sure to understand this is no joking matter. We're just looking through this out of interest. Therefore, I think that it makes all the more sense to get to the bottom of this in the best way possible. Please take a look at this clip from July before I tell you more about it.
I talked to a fireman once. This is one of the reasons that freaked me out. I had I'm wearing an LA Fire Department shout out.
Yeah.
Fire Department shirt.
It's a badass job.
Tough people, man.
Yeah.
Those people, they don't get nearly the credit that they deserve. So I was talking to this guy and he was telling me, he goes, dude, one day, he goes, it's just going to be the right wind and fire's going to start in the right place and it's going to burn through LA all the way to the ocean and there's not a thing we can do about it. I go, really? He goes, yeah, we just get lucky. He goes, we get lucky with the wind. He goes, but if the wind hits the wrong way, it's just going to burn straight through LA and there's not going to be a thing we can do about it. Because these fires are so big, dude. When they're talking about like thousands of acres that are burning simultaneously with like 40-mile-an-hour winds. And the wind's just blowing embers through the air, and those embers are landing on roofs, and those houses are going up, and they're landing on bushes, and those bushes are going up, and everything's dry. And once it happens in a way where it's so spread out that there's nothing they can do. There's nothing they can do.
You just have to evacuate, right?
Nothing they can do. They just got to get out of there.
In a grim sense of the term, this really was the perfect storm because while the Santa Ana winds or the red winds did not change direction this time, they did start to blow at a staggering 100 miles per hour, which was enough to carry even a small ember across thousands of acres to the coastline. And it all combined with the dry weather that turns leaves into the perfect tinder to light up quickly. But that's not even the full picture right now, because if a firefighter was telling this to Joe Rogan nearly a year ago, that means the government and the people higher up in the fire departments definitely knew well that this was a constantly looming threat.
It was always like, I was always waiting for the next earthquake or the next fire. I was evacuated 3 times from my house from fires. Yeah. Last one, 2 houses in front of my house burnt to the ground. Right in front of my house.
What the
Yeah, the wildfires were crazy.
Yeah, it's fucking scary, right?
Fucking scary. When you see them coming, I came home from the Comedy Store, and it was like 1 o'clock in the morning, and me and my wife were looking out the window at the fire coming over the hill. And we made an early call. We said, look, if we're wrong, we come back, the house is still here, but let's just get the out of here now. I'm like, that's too close. They weren't evacuating yet. I'm like, let's get out of here. And so we got all of our and we got a hotel in Beverly Hills, and then next thing you know, it swept through our neighborhood.
That's horrible.
It burnt 40 houses in my neighborhood.
Jesus Christ.
Dude, it's crazy.
That's awful.
Between my neighborhood and the
That's like, what is it, like July or what?
I don't remember when it happened. I want to say, I don't know. I mean, LA's dry. It's dry. All it takes is a good wind and fires. But it happened 3 times. 3 separate times we had to get evacuated.
Yeah.
It was weird, man. And when you see the walls of flame that are from the left to the right, everywhere you could see is flames, and you see houses going up, it's spooky, man. It's spooky like a horror movie.
And now, this fact has unearthed a lot more than Governor Gavin Newsom would want. For one, the city's fire department is running empty on fire hydrants and struggling to even get enough water to fight these massive fires. In fact, this article from nearly 2 years ago reveals that many people were practically screaming to get the attention of the governor when a vast majority of the storm fresh water was being drained to the Pacific Ocean in order to protect a small fish called the smelt. In what many people are calling a fish-first policy, this lack of crucial infrastructure around the area was exacerbated when the governor ordered to remove or bypass water dams in order to protect the salmon and smeltfish population. And surprisingly enough, this is something that even Donald Trump had mentioned nearly 3 months ago on Joe Rogan's podcast.
But let me give you one that you may not know.
Okay.
Which I think you know everything, actually, as
That's
a student of yours. but water, in Los Angeles you can't get proper amounts of water.
Right.
And it's unbelievably expensive. And you might have a house in Beverly Hills, and they're actually thinking about rationing water. Can you believe it?
I can believe
and
it.
I was in the farm court country with some of the congressmen. We're driving up a highway, And I say, how come all this land is so barren? It's farmland, and it looked terrible. It was just brown and bad. I said, but there's always that little corner that's so green and beautiful. They said, we have no water. I said, do you have a drought? No, we don't have a drought. I said, why don't you have no water? Because the water isn't allowed to flow down. It's got a natural flow from Canada all the way up north. Water, more water than they could ever use. And in order to protect a tiny little fish, the water up north gets routed into the Pacific Ocean. Millions and millions of gallons of water gets poured. You got to see this. We're driving up, and I had never seen it before. It's like Iowa. It's the most fertile land. Iowa's blessed with great land. Idaho for a potato, right?
Yeah.
But they're just, by the way, some land is good for a potato, some land is good for corn. It's the craziest thing. I love the farmers. They're great. They're the greatest. And by the way, they're getting killed right now.
They are.
They're getting killed because of this stupid administration. But so I see this, and I said, you got to be kidding. I said, you mean you have water? And I looked at it. It's like a valve in your sink, except it's massive. The thing's 5 times taller than your ceiling.
And now, Donald Trump has put Gavin Newsom in the firing line of his criticism, especially considering he's a frontrunner to take over the Democratic Party ticket in 2028. He wrote on Truth Social demanding his resignation, saying, quote, one of the best and most beautiful parts of the United States, of America's burning to the ground, its ashes, and Gavin Newsom should resign. This is his fault. And while that happens, there's people like Bernie Sanders trying to cover for this trail of failures from the state governor at preventing or coping with these wildfires. By throwing all of that rubble on climate change instead, writing on X, he said, quote, I have spent a lot of time in Los Angeles. It is an extraordinarily beautiful place. Watching LA burn is extremely painful. The footage is nothing short of apocalyptic. I'm deeply sad for the people of this wonderful city. We need climate action now. But there was no way that it could all simply be chalked up to the climate, when the string of failures with cleaning forest, having enough reservoirs and dams, and preparing for an eventual fallout like this should have always been front and center. Joe Rogan spoke to Mel Gibson this week, and they were certainly a lot more candid in taking Gavin Newsom to task.
We were just talking about the wildfire situation and how crazy it is that they spent $24 billion last year on the homeless.
Yeah.
And what did they spend on preventing these wildfires?
Zero.
Zip.
And in 2019, I think Newsom said, I'm going to take care of the forests and maintain the forests and do all that kind of stuff. He didn't do anything.
And then on top of that, they cut the water off.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's all funny. And then I think all our tax dollars probably went for Gavin's hair gel. I don't know, but it's like, it's sad. It's like the place is just on fire.
Well, the whole state is just so poorly managed. It's so it's so frustrating and confusing. And then he gets on TV and pretends like everything's great. Mm-hmm. And California's the best. We have the best state. We have the most amazing economy. And you're out of your mind, dude. You've ruined this state. Personally ruined it.
That's tough to hear, but these wildfires have become all the more damaging for Gavin Newsom's own public image, especially when he was just gearing up to be the new face of the Democratic Party. And as of right now, as these fires still rage on, I think a lot of the dust will have to settle before it's appropriate to ask the real tough questions of accountability. But as these elections have shown, the voter at home never really forgets these and their response when standing at the ballot box. Let me know in the comments if you agree and share this across your social media to get the word out. These fires are devastating and they could have a ripple effect a lot farther into politics and society that we'll only be able to understand in the future with hindsight.